What's up? Right? It's late. Wake up. I know how it is after lunch, right? Are you excited to talk about paperwork? All right. My kind of people. I want to actually thank Courtney for helping me name this talk. We were on her podcast, and she noted that the work we were doing just kind of sounded like we were finding tunnels and things in the past. So Incident Archaeology was born. But first, I just want to introduce myself a little. If you don't know me, I'm a staff engineer and an incident manager on call at Spotify, so I help people work through their incidents, not quite like a commander. I'm not speaking for Spotify. These words are my own. Please don't say anything that would get me fired. I have about 25 years in tech. I've done it all. I've been a junior PC tech. I've been a sysadmin, an ERP software developer. Weirdly, I've never had the title of SRE. I kind of just skipped it. But I feel like I've always been an SRE, and I've always just been this curious person who wants to know, how did that break? Like, how did you even do that? And why am I here today? What am I going to be talking about this incident archaeology? I'm here to promote psychological safety. I just heard in the previous talk, I thought that was a beautiful example of where psychological safety actually contributed to a faster resolution. The person who probably broke it wasn't hesitant at all. I broke it. That's what we want, right? And we want to be able to look at all of our mistakes and all of these broken things and learn from them and not get all hemmed up in the emotional baggage that comes along with that. I also just want to share a process. I haven't heard too many people talk about what we have been doing for the last few years at Spotify, so I want you to take a look and inspire and collaborate with you. Maybe you're going to bring something as well. I'd love to talk to you after this if you want to do a similar study. Also, just a word on sharing in public. I was the one who asked that question. I'm at a consumer-focused company. We are constrained on what we can say a lot of times at conferences like this. I was really proud of Duolingo for sharing that clear incident report. I've seen more of it happening. I just want to encourage everybody to keep trying. It does take some work. I want to also thank all the managers who approved and legal departments who said, yeah, you can share, because this is how I learn as well, by being able to share with you. I want to hear what you have to say, and I can't do it if I have to hide all the graphs or make everything too vague. So I want to just ask everybody who hasn't been able to share to keep doing the work. We really do need to share. Incident archaeology, what's it about? Interestingly enough, the image you see on the left, the big iceberg, that's an in-depth view of an iceberg. You can see the whole thing. And actually, interesting enough, Courtney's going to talk about the value of doing a study where you can actually get to the bottom of that iceberg, and it is invaluable. I believe deeply in that. But today, we're going to talk about breadth. What can we learn from all the icebergs that are out there, all of the encounters with icebergs? Maybe we didn't spend all the time to get all the facts, but we got enough from the collection that we can learn about icebergs in general and how we handle them. By the end of this, I really want you to be inspired to just dive into those stacks of paperwork and JIRA tickets or however you're tracking your incidents and find some gold in there. But first, I think it's important that we answer this question because I get this from developers. I remember Amy's talk from yesterday, that Team Inferno, they're busy, they're just making the magic that is the product. Why do we have to have incidents? Can we just fix stuff and move on? What's the big deal? This just feels like paperwork, and it's a valid question. But I always coach back and say, it's kind of the wrong question. What you're really asking me is, what's the value of this work? Because we all have too much work. There's always limits on our resources. And so you just want to know, is this worth my time to actually go and file this incident report and fill out all these required fields? And hopefully, if your company has an incident program at all, you've thought this through a little and you have an answer. You have several answers, right? What's the value of this? You want to be able to communicate. We want to provide communication during a stressful event. Maybe something where there are a lot of people who are being alerted or woken up. You want to provide accountability. You don't want things to be costing the company money or people time and just swept under the rug. You also want to just coordinate. There may be somebody over on this side of the complex system and this side of the complex system, and they need to know about each other and what they're experiencing. And maybe, if you're lucky, maybe it's also so we can learn, hopefully more and more. That's important. But then the question is, these are great values, right? But then we look at what are we actually asking people to do? And if you're involved in incidents, you're doing all of these things. Some companies One person does all of these, right? You need to file that ticket, make sure the status is accurate, update it often, estimate the impact, communicate it up, document the actions that you're taking. Once it's mitigated, tell everybody that it's mitigated. Coordinate a post-incident review meeting or postmortem, whatever you call it. Write up timelines, investigations, determine key milestones on the way to resolution, like what was the start and end time, have that debate, have another meeting, facilitate a discussion, like, right? Like, now, we're being repressed, right? We're engineers. We want to build things. We want to fix things. And even as SREs, this stuff is important, but how much can we take, right? Well, we felt this way at Spotify. We were looking at it in our little team that takes a look at our little corner of Spotify, and we wondered, like, what is the value of all those actions? What could we learn from them? Maybe we can actually extract value and give it back to those engineers and the leaders and tell them what's going on. So we started digging. I guarantee if you have the concept of an incident, you have artifacts. You have something out there buried that's evidence that something went wrong in the past. And for the most part, we probably have engineers who've forgotten about most of them. You've probably forgotten about most of them, unless you've done a really good job of doing detailed incident reports and you're doing great sharing. I know Indeed presented at the Learning from Incident conference. Unless you're doing that level of share out, which I think everybody should get to, people just forget what's been going on. We started looking and we found a bunch of stuff, but we were specifically looking for some answers. So like good scientists, we thought, we were actually terrible scientists, we made some hypotheses. One of the things that was going on when we started doing this was we had started moving from a model where only senior engineers and staff engineers were on call to everybody who has engineer in their title being on call. We haven't gotten to the manager thing yet, but we're working on it. But we absolutely had some valid concerns from those junior engineers. I'm worried that I'm going to be woke up in the middle of the night. This is going to be complex, and it's going to be long, and it's going to be painful. And so we said, well, let's look at what's been happening, right? Is that actually true? That's just an assumption that you're making, and it's also a bias because what are the incidents that hurt you the most? The ones that woke you up in the middle of the night were super complex and long. And so we made a good hypothesis, we think. It was falsifiable. We found out later it was built on that shaky ground of MTTR, and I know some of you are really centered on that, but I have some data for you, and Courtney has some as well, that might make you want to take a second look at these metrics, and also like measuring complexity. Like we were really thinking well of ourselves, but we thought we could do that. So we went through the data. I'll talk more about how we got this, but we looked at every incident for a year in our little corner of Spotify, and we actually got some interesting results. They don't really answer the hypothesis. We cannot prove or disprove the hypothesis from this, but what we can tell you is almost no incidents happen at night. They do. For the entire year, we had about 1 per hour at night, but sometimes we had 2. But in general, we were able to allay a lot of those fears just by saying, look, it does happen, it may happen, but not at night. And when we looked at the comparison of severity, after hours, we got graphs like this histogram on the right, which was, we can't make any sense of MTTR. None, not in the aggregate. If we start to segment it, we can start to see patterns. But in terms of what's going to happen at night, are these going to be long incidents? We can't tell you. And this is the beginning of us starting to let go of MTTR at all. We also, I just think this was funny. We put this in our methodology, in our paper, and we said, yeah, we're going to run all 130 incidents. We're going to look at them and apply this rubric. And I challenge you to apply this rubric to all of your incidents in less than 20 minutes. We spent all our time trying to figure this out and debating it. And when we went and flagged incidents for group review, we couldn't decide. We realized half of them got left blank. This was basically a useless qualitative measure. But we did have some other that we just kind of threw in there, like whether or not something has a postmortem. And this was actually a really important finding for our team. So my team was essentially focused on improving reliability and incident handling in general. And we assumed that postmortems were happening. And they were about 55% of the time. But when we looked at the incidents, we couldn't find evidence that they even happened in 45%. And this was a big deal for us because we were actually leaning hard on those learnings and those remediations, things that were coming out of them. So we started a program for 2021 to basically just be annoying pests and make everybody do postmortems. Another note from the 2020 survey, we were novices. And I hope there aren't any data scientists in the room, because I mean, this was just like, our data scientists were not happy when they saw this. They eviscerated it. And by eviscerate, I mean, Jeff Hudson, the nicest man in the world, said, I don't really love the usage of that visualization. Just speared right through the heart. That's as far as it goes with Jeff. We learned something. We should have talked to Jeff before we started doing this work. Jeff has all the statistical knowledge. We have some statistical leanings, and we kind of know how statistics work. Jeff lives and dies this. Hopefully you have somebody who can actually review your work so you don't make graphs like that. So a year goes by, another 130 or so incidents happen, and we take another look. And we decided, well, we've been running this program for a year. We definitely improve things. Postmortems are now the norm. This is kind of a weird way to write a hypothesis, but again, we had limited time. So norm, we kind of later decided was 75%, but we realized we were kind of moving the goalposts for ourselves. But at least it was easy to measure. You either find a postmortem or you don't. And it was pretty disappointing. It really hadn't moved. We did go from 55 to 62%, but it left us wondering, like, what's going on? And so this kicked off a whole round where we leaned on our user researchers to actually talk to our internal developers and say, what's going on? Like, you declared an incident. What happened there? Why didn't that meeting happen? And we got two answers. One was the meeting did happen, but we didn't write anything down, and we just moved on, and we all forgot. And a lot of them said, this process is ambiguous, it's heavyweight, and I've never been trained. And so this allowed us as a team to really focus in. We gave people lighter weight options. We started training people on how to do postmortem facilitation. And we also gave them a break and said, if it really isn't going to happen, don't sweat it. Just maybe do an async, write up a report, put it out there, get some comments, and move on for some of those lower impact. And that we got a lot of good feedback on that was a good program. We also leaned a little more into our curiosity in that second study. We decided we just want to know, like, how much are incidents hurting us? More of like a census. We didn't really have a hypothesis around this one. We just knew that incidents are challenging the productivity. I apologize for the small text, but I wanted to get the whole thing in because this rubric actually worked fantastically well. You're either after hours or you're during work hours for the team that declared it. And then we kind of just looked for, how wide did this get? How many people got involved? And we were able to really quickly bucket these and score these. Once we did that, we mashed it up with our postmortem, and we actually had our answer. People will bug you if they got bugged, right? Those productivity impacts where lots of people got involved or people woke up at night, they're not going to let you get away with not running a postmortem. But those lower impact ones where only a few people resolved it or it was resolved really quickly and it didn't spread wide through the org, yeah, there's only about 50%. This helped us explain and also give us more encouragement to work on those lower stakes postmortems, but we still were able to get learnings from those. So how do you do this? It's pretty simple. It should just look like a natural study. Essentially, go find some artifacts. We went around in Jira, because that's where we declare incidents. Maybe you find them in PagerDuty. Maybe you find multiple sources of data and mash them up. We've tried that this year. We haven't been able to publish our findings internally yet, but we were able to, sort of look at that productivity impact from alerting frequency as well. Find the artifacts first. Just make sure you've got something. Take a good sanity check of them. And then decide how much time you can commit. I really want to encourage you to try this. We only spend about 40 hours of analyst time per year to get these results. And these are management reports. These are invaluable insights that we bring them about what's going on with incidents and what do the trends look like. Just basic stuff. Make some hypotheses. Make sure that you keep yourselves scoped in. Try to come up with a methodology that fits in the time box. So for instance, we decided we're going to spend 40 hours, divide by the number of incidents. Our time box is that many minutes. Stick to it. It really works. This is the time to run it by the data scientists. We added this one in 2021, and it's been really effective. And the data scientists will help to say, oh, well, you're going to need some correlating variables, or you can't correlate that one, or I want to see this, and they try to help us predict what we're looking for in the survey. Break up the artifacts into a list. We just used Google Sheets. However you do it, study each one. Analyze the data. We use Jupyter. Just something to get your visualizations and do your analysis, and then write it up and learn and share the heck out of this thing. We blog about it. We put it in front of everybody because it turns out this is all of everyone's pain. And we got some feedback that the folks who were involved with incidents who'd forgotten about them really appreciated actually seeing their work. They also had a lot of criticism about how we had scored their incidents, but that's what we wanted. We started the conversation. I just want to make a note too, if you do decide to charge off into your incident data and try to do this, just remember that correlations here are really problematic. If you have enough incidents where you can get a normal distribution on things like MTTR, you might have bigger problems than we can solve with an incident study. So just remember that. It's more of a census. You're just trying to figure out where the buckets of data are and what's going on, and be able to give some sense to the whole collection. Because also your population is often unknown. You may have JIRA tickets for only 30%. Maybe you have a process that discards incidents. It's a really problematic space to make any kind of statistical correlations. And just as a final piece of sort of candy for you, some other things that we just found in our studies. Every single incident study we've done now, 3 of them, has returned with the same conclusion. Nobody at Spotify can tell you what the start or end of an incident actually is. Is it when it was detected? Is it when the impact started? Is it when the first impact? When is the end? There's a debate here, and I'm sure you all have opinions about them, but in terms of doing science on them, we just discarded it. We actually encouraged people to stop worrying too much about their start and end times. There are better things to do with your time. We also found that about 75% of people had already done that and just took the default, which is start is when you open the ticket, end is when you close the ticket. Another one, uptime success can hide massive problems with productivity. We measure our uptime. We live and die by that. It turns out we were burning people out. You can see the trend upward with uptime and downward in some of our internal developer sentiment surveys. So this data was very helpful in bringing color and context to that. Also, 80% of our incidents were declared during business hours, which was very helpful for helping people get on call quicker. And also only 30% of our declared incidents were actually related to our own local changes. It's the environment changing around us. These are all useful insights. I hope you find some as well. That's all I have. Thank you.